Hello, everyone. Wish you a very good evening. I hope you all had a wonderful Diwali celebration with your family and friends. Here we are again with our fifth episode of season 4. International Council for Circular Economy welcomes you to our Circular Chat series. The Circular Chat is an initiative by ICCE to develop and promote the idea of a circular economy and its related topics. We have already discussed four major topics in this season till now, which are standards and frameworks, environmental, social, and governance factors in ESG. Today, we'll be talking about risks and opportunities in ESG. I'm Surbhi, and I'm glad to host our guest speaker today, Mr. Nishant Parekh. He's joining us from Netherlands. Nishant is the managing director at SocioVision and an associate partner at 2 Impact Consulting, where they help clients in ESG strategy and reporting. He has 12 plus years of experience in the sustainability space. He has worked across several industries like healthcare, energy, chemical, and financial services. He supports companies in creating sustainability, circular, and eco design strategies and roadmaps to realize targets and ambitions. He's an expert in reporting regulations, standards, and frameworks, and has led integrated annual report projects in large corporates. He has also worked with several leading think tanks and contributed to international publications on circular economy and impact measurement. Hi, Nishant. A very warm welcome to the discussion today, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Nishant, let's start with our questions with you today. So, Nishant, it
Yeah.
has been observed that with ESG taking a big stage, many companies are deriving its policies and regulations from the perspective of ESG. So, do you think stricter regulations and policies related issues could result in huge economic and reputational losses for companies? At the same time, are the actual benefits of ESG greater than these penalties, considering the reputation of the company?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, I definitely think they are much greater than the penalties. So I feel that the penalty part is more of an hygiene, but there are two clear benefits that I see from ESG. I think one is around future proofing your own business. And then the second one is access to capital. And now let me elaborate a bit further on both of these points, right? So what I see more in the external landscape is clients and customers or consumers as well are demanding more and more sustainable solutions. If you look into the B2B space, so business to business, if you really want to win tenders towards bigger corporate clients, more and more weightage is already being given to sustainability or ESG performance of the company. And two industries that come to my mind, which I've worked quite closely with, are the healthcare industry and the construction industry, are very clear examples where the weightage of sustainability has grown over the years, and now it's almost 20 to 30% of the entire tender process. And I think in the business to consumer space, there's a huge shift in the global space around adaptation of sustainable lifestyles. So how can so people are buying more consciously, they're reducing meat consumption, they're also opting for low carbon emissions as a mode of transport. So there's a clear customer client need and demand around this thing, which I see a huge benefit. And then the second part is around access to capital. And what I notice in there as a global trend is global capital is shifting towards responsible and sustainable investing. Just to mention a stat here, the global sustainability funds reached a record high of $3.9 trillion in the third quarter of 2021, right? Which has doubled in less than 12 months. And what investors are now looking for to invest in companies who have better ESG performance in order to deliver value and returns in this volatile environment, like the war between Ukraine and Russia, the changing fuel prices, etc.
Right, right. So definitely, these are resulting into the ESG is definitely helping the companies, the investors, everyone to have a better decision and take an informed decision. So, what is the role of ESG reporting in flagging risks or giving early warning signs?
Yeah, so if you're closely monitoring the ESG reporting landscape, you would be overwhelmed. That's what I always say. It's because
Mm,
that landscape is rapidly evolving and it's going so fast. There are some international financial standard setters like IFRS, so that's the International Financial Reporting Standards, are also now being involved in defining global sustainability standards. So this already shows a clear sign of the growing need and importance of ESG reporting, but at the same time, it also highlights the need for standardization in the field of sustainability reporting. Like financial reporting is fairly easier and simple to do. You have your P&L statement, you have your balance sheet, and you have your cash flows, and there's proper procedures that you can follow. But that is not currently the case in case of sustainability reporting, and I think that is steadily evolving, and it is becoming it will standardize in the coming years or so. How I see
mm,
ESG reporting as flagging of risk, I see it should be seen more as an additional push or lever to further integrate sustainability into your own organizations, in your strategy making, in your organizational systems and processes, but eventually also your day-to-day activities, right? And
yeah.
just to state a couple of examples, back in 2020, 2017, a set of parties had initiated task force on climate related financial disclosure, already necessitating the need to report on climate related disclosures from an investor perspective. So that already showed 5 years ago that the climate disclosures will become slowly mandatory in different jurisdictions.
Mm,
The same example
yeah.
could be reflected back to biodiversity. So in 2020, there is another initiative called Task Force on Nature Related Financial Disclosures, and now they are
Mm,
setting up a framework for companies to disclose on nature related risks, opportunities, and metrics around it, and how they should set up their entire strategy and governance. So these are just a few examples to show that reporting sometimes also hints you which topics are more and more gaining importance and which one should be closely monitoring.
right, right. So definitely about flagging risks, it is definitely telling us which points to keep track of and which are the warning signs. So how does
Yeah.
ESG help in assessing the opportunities that a corporate can leverage?
Yeah, so for me, if I think the most important aspect or most important role of ESG is that it expands the scope beyond financial KPIs in companies' strategy creation and its decision making. I think those two are quite crucial in where the company would like to head and what decisions they want to make. So, for example, rather than only looking at financial KPIs like number of orders that you're going to intake, what is your customer acquisition rate, what are your revenues, what are your costs, taking ESG will help. Taking environmental and social impacts into your strategy and decision making will help. Yeah, to broaden your lens in that case. Let me give you an example here. An interesting case study that I often also refer to in my conversations with companies is a case study from Signify. So back in 2000, and Signify, which was formerly Philips Lighting, if some of you guys don't know who Signify is, but back in 2016, 2006, they issued a global call to phase out traditional incandescent light bulbs. And during that time, Signify was a market leader in this sector, in this product sector. Almost two-third of their sales volume was coming from this, and the alternative, that was the LED lights, that's light emitting diode lighting, was not a viable commercial alternative back then. So what Signify did is through this they pushed this decision helped them push and reprioritize their focus in research and development work, and they strongly transformed their entire portfolio of nascent LED technologies into a market-ready LED technology, which was then that shift the entire market of the lighting industry as a whole. So, and now today they are the market leaders in the LED space. So it really also shows that if you start focusing on some of the environmental and social topics and take a bold stance at the beginning of the when even you don't see a particular market, can also serve you well in 3 to 5 years, 5 years horizon, even 10 years horizon. So it's more also how you can
Yeah,
rethink the vision and then
right.
use that as an opportunity.
Yeah, this might take time, but when you start in this direction, this will definitely going to have a fruitful, the outcome. So rightly said. And how can companies leverage ESG ratings to improve their reporting and strategies?
Yeah, so I think this is also another interesting question, right? It definitely depends on the maturity of a company on the ESG level, and they could leverage ESG ratings in different ways. And when I talk about ESG ratings, that has also become more and more mainstream now. And there are some big ESG rating agencies, the likes of Sustainalytics, Standard and Poor 500 corporate sustainability assessments. There's mornings, then there's Visio Iris, etc. So there are more mainstream rating agencies that benchmark companies in different industries. And I think
Mm,
how companies can leverage these rating agencies is first of all to understand what are the industry related impacts, environmental and social impacts they could have. So the environmental and social impacts in the food and agri sector would be significantly different from environmental and social impacts in a healthcare sector. And what ESG ratings have done over the years is developed very detailed analysis ratings to understanding of what kind of impacts different sectors have on the environment and the social side as well. So I think that that's one of the leverage points. If a company is more initial in
mm,
its journey towards ESG, they could use to understand what kind of impacts does your organization or your sector have
mm,
on the environmental topics like climate change, biodiversity. And I think
mm,
the second thing that they companies could also leverage through ESG ratings is if you have worked in this space or with an ESG rating, you would see it goes quite granular and quite detailed into what the questions do they ask for. So they really look at all the way from how does your governance set up on topics like climate change or biodiversity to what is your strategy to assess the risks and also mitigate opportunities, and what are the metrics and targets you have set in place to achieve, for example, net zero or develop science-based targets and how you're achieving those, and then and then also how you're implementing some of those all of those measures. So I think it will also give
mm,
ratings can also help you in guiding, as I also mentioned previously,
mm.
to drive some of these sustainability related topics in strategy, in organizational processes and systems.
Right. So, rightly said, every company has a different impact. Every sector has different impacts on the environment and social factors, and they
Yeah.
have to keep that in mind. All the companies have to keep that in mind when doing ESG reporting and all. So, how can you tell us why some corporates show a general complacency in risk forecasting?
Yeah, this is a great question, and how I interpret this is more that okay, why do risk teams so far do not fully factor in environmental and social risks into their risk management, right? So like what I
Mm,
always see is still the risk management teams within some of the organizations still focus on the economic risks, and often social and environmental risks are not captured fully. And I think there are three reasons why this is the case. I think the first reason is the environmental and social risks are quite difficult to quantify, mainly due to the
mm,
complexity and the interconnected nature of these topics. So, for example, biodiversity as a topic also has an impact on climate change, but it also has an impact on human health. So how do you factor in some of these complexities into quantification? And that's where it gets a lot more trickier, and the risk managers often do not have the answers to that. And I think that leads back to the second reason why is that there is no standardized approach to measure some of these externalities, so to say. So I think, for example, for greenhouse gas measurement, we have greenhouse gas reporting protocol to measure carbon emissions, but uh,
Hmm.
we do not have a similar protocol for biodiversity or for resource use, for example. And the social side, like human
Right.
rights, child labor, diversity, inclusion, that is even more complex, and it's more even geography specific. So it would be
Hmm.
completely different on this side of the sphere in the Netherlands, while it could be definitely much more different in India or in Bangladesh or in other
Hmm.
countries. So that is another social side is even more complex to tackle. And then the third part and the last part, which I feel is quite critical, is currently there is also a lack of knowledge and skills to really see how risk management processes can embrace these environmental and social risks quite easily. And I think the three topics that I just mentioned, right? Quantification,
Hmm.
standardized approach, and lack of skills and knowledge are also interlinked.
Hmm.
So
Right.
that's why you also see more and more think tanks and agencies trying to bridge that knowledge, close that knowledge, develop standardized
Hmm.
approach, and see how we can quantify some of those things.
Right, definitely. So linking all these points together is the key to the right kind of forecasting and bringing the right kind of approach. So,
Yeah.
what major risks and opportunities do you see for the companies in developing countries, especially, and how can they work on them?
Yeah, so yeah, low middle income countries, I feel I see risks and opportunities more two sides of the same coin. So I think if you see a risk, you can try and translate that into an opportunity as well, and that could be your more strategic side. And I think, in my view, the low middle income countries, I feel are faced with three
Faced with
specific
three
risks
specific risks.
that I feel. First one is around the physical risks of climate change, right? So extreme drought, heat waves, etc. I think that those are going to impact the lower middle income countries that are based in the tropical region much more than the people in the north of the world, right? So the global north. And I think food and agri industry here is a very clear example that would be affected by the physical risks of climate change. The second risk that I do see, and this can also be translated into opportunities, and I will tell you how to work on them. The second risk that I see is the risk of stranded assets. So, for example, using still an old technology that will become obsolete earlier than its expected lifetime. So, an example I always give is, let's say if you build a coal-fired power plant right now, assuming that its lifespan would be 25 years, while it could be obsolete in the next 10 years or so due to the rise of renewable sources of energy, etc. So I think there's a big risk of stranded assets that should be considered. And then the third risk that I see for the lower middle income countries is stricter social standards from their European clients. So I, in this globalized world, I know that a lot of large corporates or even small corporates are working quite closely with the European companies, but also the US companies. But in Europe, there is an upcoming legislation that would require the European companies with a certain amount of revenues and above to disclose their human rights related impacts across the value chain. So they would have to take into account their human right impacts of the supply chain as well. Meaning that, okay, if you are a supplier of a customer in Europe and you're not meeting the human right related criteria that the client has set, it is likely that you would be falling out and your business would lead to, yeah, you would miss out on a business opportunity. So I think these are the three main risks that I foresee, but they are also I see them as an opportunity as well. And how
Hmm.
can companies work on this in the lower middle income countries is, as I also mentioned previously, right, is to really first understand what are the environmental and social impacts in your industry specifically. This will differ per sector. So understand, if you're working in the food and agri sector, biodiversity is important, climate change is important, human rights is important. So think of what is relevant to your sector. Then the second part of how you could work on it is really try to focus on technologies or solutions that are to limit those impacts. For example, how can you develop a smart farming solution that produces a similar yield each year, irrespective of the droughting conditions or the seasonal conditions that are there as well? Think of the
Yeah.
Signify example that I also gave, just mentioned, right? What is the
Mm.
industry going to look like in 5 years from now, 10 years from now? That's how I would think to focus on. And lastly, I think how do you integrate some of these ESG topics, not some, all of these ESG topics in your organizations, in your strategy making, in your decision making? And I always say to my clients, yeah, build pilots, start small, and then scale. So often it is very difficult to bring an entire huge project and change the entire strategy. So, but sometimes it's just wise to do a couple of pilots, show the business case, the business value of a product solution, and then from there scale up as well. So, yeah.
Right, right. So definitely, to summarize, it has to be relevant to the sector, whichever sector it is. It can be different. It depends upon demographics also. Which location are you in? Which company is there? What location are you in? And then there can be different solutions also to all the problems, the relevant factors, depending upon the relevant factors, definitely. And so we had an insightful session with you. It was quite informative, Nishant, today. And we had discussed all the risks and opportunities that would be there. So when there are risks, there will be opportunities as well. It depends upon how you take it, how companies are taking it. All the risks can be converted into opportunities, definitely. So thanks a lot, Nishant, for being here with us. You have joined us from Netherlands, and we are very thankful to you and to all the audience also that we have today here. A big thanks to you all as well. And if you have any queries regarding this topic, do write to us on info@icce.com. We'll be back at the same time next week. And if you don't want to miss out on any updates or future conversations, do follow our social media pages and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a great evening and stay blessed. Thank you, Nishant. Thanks a lot for being here with us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Surabhi.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.